I'm Sophia Mitchell, 32, and our family Thanksgiving will haunt me forever. My grandfather Warren, the 8-year-old tech billionaire everyone fears and respects, stood before us with a purple bruise beneath his right eye. The crystal chandelier light made it impossible to ignore. 23 relatives froze as he tapped his glass. "I know which one of you pushed me down the stairs yesterday," he announced calmly, "and I've changed my will accordingly." In that moment, I realized our family would never be the same. Before I dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had family drama at Thanksgiving, though I guarantee yours doesn't compare to what I'm about to share. The shocking truth behind that bruise changed everything I thought I knew about my family. To understand the nuclear bomb that detonated at our Thanksgiving table, you need to know about the Mitchells. We're not just wealthy, we're American royalty, according to Forbes. Old railroad money compounded by my grandfather Warren's tech empire, Mitchell Industries, now valued at $11 billion. Warren has 3 children each, with their own branch of the family drama. My father, Robert, is the eldest, the presumed heir who followed Warren into business, but never quite measured up to the old man's expectations. My dad married my mother, Catherine, a former model with a sharp mind for social climbing. Then there's my Aunt Elizabeth, the middle child with a perpetual chip on her shoulder about being overlooked despite her brilliant financial mind. She married Gregory, a professor who never quite fit in with the Mitchell ambition. Finally, there's Uncle James, the baby of the family, and frustratingly, Warren's favorite. His wife, Victoria, is his third 30 years, his junior, and constantly working to secure her position. Between the 3 branches, there are 8 grandchildren, including me. I work in marketing successfully. I might add, though, I've deliberately kept my distance from the family business. My cousins range from Tyler Elizabeth's son, who constantly launches failed startups, to the youngest James's 12-year-old daughter with his second wife. Warren built his fortune on microprocessors in the 80s, but his real talent was identifying weakness and exploiting it. He applied this same ruthless approach to family matters, constantly testing loyalties, creating competitions for his approval. Family gatherings were less celebrations and more performance evaluations. A week before Thanksgiving, we all received identical text messages. Full family attendance required this Thanksgiving. Important business matters to discuss. No exceptions. Warren never asked for anything, he commanded it. The summons came during a period of strange behavior from my grandfather. His executive assistant had quit suddenly after 20 years. Board members whispered about erratic decisions. My father spent hours on late-night phone calls discussing Warren's concerning episodes. Some suggested early dementia. Others claimed he was self-medicating with experimental drugs after his wife, my grandmother, Margaret, had survived a cancer scare. I arrived at the estate first a day early. The Mitchell mansion sits on 40 acres overlooking Lake Michigan. It's a modernist monstrosity of glass and steel that Warren commissioned in the 90s, a billionaire's middle finger to traditional architecture. The staff busied themselves with Thanksgiving preparations, while Warren sequestered himself in his study. That evening, I found him staring at old family photos. "Sophia," he acknowledged without looking up. "At least one of my descendants has integrity." "What's that supposed to mean, Grandpa?" "You'll see tomorrow." He slid a photo across his desk, my grandmother in her 20s, stunning beside a young Warren. Sometimes I forget that everything important started with her. I left feeling unsettled. Something was coming, something that would test the thin veneer of familial respect we'd maintained for decades. As family members arrived the next morning, I watched their practiced performances. My father immediately sought Warren's approval on recent business decisions. Elizabeth complained about the family trust's investment strategy. James boasted about his latest acquisition. Through it all, Warren said almost nothing, just observed with those calculating eyes that built an empire. No one mentioned his increasing frailty or the tremor in his right hand. The Mitchell way was to ignore weakness until it could be exploited. I just never imagined how spectacularly that philosophy would backfire. The Mitchell estate transformed for Thanksgiving, with an opulence that would make Martha Stewart weep. Staff had arranged autumn flower displays worth more than most cars throughout the 20,000-square-foot main house. The dining room table, a single piece of redwood that required 16 people to move, stretched beneath a chandelier dripping with Swarovski crystals. Each place setting included 3 types of wine glasses and sterling silver service that predated the Civil War. Family members arrived in waves, their luxury vehicles forming a high-end dealership display in the circular driveway. My father and mother came first, Robert checking his phone constantly for market updates, while Catherine critiqued the flower arrangements. Elizabeth and Gregory arrived with their 3 children, including Tyler, who immediately headed for Warren's private bar. James made his signature late entrance with Victoria and their daughter apologizing with practiced insincerity about their delayed private flight from Aspen. I observed the choreographed greetings, air kisses, firm handshakes, compliments no one meant. But beneath the performance, unusual tensions surfaced. My father cornered James in the library, their hushed argument ending abruptly when I approached. Elizabeth and Victoria, normally careful to maintain polite distance, huddled in intense conversation by the kitchen. My grandmother Margaret, usually the peacekeeper, remained oddly detached, watching everyone with uncharacteristic wariness. The most surprising arrival came last Harold Parker, the family's estate attorney for 30 years. His presence at Thanksgiving was unprecedented. When I asked why he'd come, he adjusted his bow tie nervously. "Your grandfather insisted." That's all I can say. The first course, butternut squash soup with truffle oil, arrived with uncomfortable silence. Warren sat at the head of the table, barely touching his food, his gaze methodically shifting from one family member to another. I noticed his focus lingering on Tyler, who couldn't stop fidgeting with his napkin. "Wonderful news about the Axiom merger," my father finally said, addressing Warren directly. The board vote was unanimous. Almost, Warren replied. One dissenter. Who would be foolish enough to oppose such a clear win? Victoria asked her diamond bracelet, catching the light as she reached for her wine. "Someone with inside information," Warren said flatly. "Someone who knows things they shouldn't." The table fell silent again. The Axiom merger had been contentious. A legacy technology company Warren wanted to acquire despite its questionable financials. The family had divided on the issue, with Elizabeth and Gregory vocally opposed while James enthusiastically supported it. Speaking of information, Warren continued, "I've been reviewing security measures at all our properties. You'd be surprised what modern surveillance systems can capture." Tyler knocked over his water glass, causing a momentary distraction. As the staff rushed to clean up, I noticed my mother exchanging a look with James that seemed oddly conspiratorial. Something was very wrong. Before dessert, Warren excused himself. "Age demands certain accommodations," he said with uncharacteristic humility. "Continue without me. I'll return shortly." 20 minutes passed. Then came a heavy thud from the main staircase, followed by a cry of alarm from one of the staff. Everyone rushed to find Warren, crumpled at the bottom of the stairs, a security guard helping him to his feet. Blood trickled from a cut beneath his right eye. "I'm fine," he insisted, waving away my grandmother's concern. "Just tripped on that loose carpet edge. Clumsy of me, but I'd been up and down those stairs dozens of times that day." There was no loose carpet edge. As the family fussed around Warren, I alone noticed a figure slipping away from the upper landing, just a glimpse before they disappeared down the hallway. I couldn't identify who it was, but the deliberate, quiet movement suggested someone who didn't want to be seen. The family divided instantly, some genuinely concerned, others calculating the implications for the inheritance if Warren was seriously injured. My father immediately called Warren's private doctor. Elizabeth suggested a hospital. James took control of the situation, helping Warren to his study and dismissing everyone else. Just a minor fall, Warren insisted, though the developing bruise suggested otherwise. Let's return to our meal. I refused to let a little tumble ruin Thanksgiving, but the damage was done. Something had shifted. The veneer of family harmony had cracked, revealing the ruthless ambition beneath. As we reluctantly returned to the dining room, I caught Warren watching us with an expression that chilled me. Not anger or pain, but satisfaction. Like he'd set a trap and we were all walking right into it. I know exactly which one of you pushed me down the stairs yesterday. Warren's words hung in the air like smoke. His bruised face looked demonic in the candlelight as he stood at the head of the table. The pumpkin pie sat untouched as 23 pairs of eyes widened in shock. "That's ridiculous," my father sputtered first. "You said yourself you tripped." "Did I?" Warren smiled coldly. "A necessary fiction to observe your reactions. Very illuminating." "Dad, you can't seriously think someone in this family would," Elizabeth began. "What I think," Warren cut her off, "is that someone here believes $11 billion is worth a murder attempt." Murder Victoria gasped theatrically. "It was hardly a serious fall. This time," Warren said. "But my security team found the staircase carpet had been deliberately tampered with. Professional job. Amateur motivation." Harold Parker cleared his throat. "Perhaps this discussion should happen privately after the holiday." "No." Warren's fist hit the table, rattling crystal. "I want everyone to know I've launched a full investigation. My security team has been reviewing footage from cameras throughout the house." My cousin Tyler went pale. "Cameras? What cameras?" "The ones I had installed last month in every hallway, stairwell, and common area." Warren's eyes narrowed. "Did you think I wouldn't protect myself? I know what's been happening behind my back." The table erupted. Accusations flew between family branches. My father demanded to see this alleged footage. Elizabeth claimed Warren was becoming paranoid. James suggested perhaps it was time to discuss Warren's mental fitness to run the company. Enough. Warren's voice silenced everyone. "The guilty party has 24 hours to confess, or I'm disinheriting everyone except the one person I still trust. And I'll take my evidence to the police." Thanksgiving dinner imploded. Some stormed out. Others pleaded innocence. My grandmother disappeared upstairs without a word. I sat frozen, processing what I'd seen the previous night, that retreating figure on the landing. As the chaos continued, my Uncle James cornered me by the dessert table. "Sophia, you were here last night. Did you see anything?" Unusual. His tone was casual, but his eyes were hard. "No," I lied instinctively. "I went to bed early." "Really? One of the staff mentioned seeing you near the main staircase around the time of the incident." Before I could respond, my father interrupted, pulling James aside for what appeared to be a heated exchange. I slipped away, my heart pounding. Later that night, unable to sleep, I wandered down to the kitchen for tea. Voices from the library stopped me, my father and Aunt Elizabeth in a vicious argument. "You've always been jealous of my position," my father hissed. "Would you really try to kill your own father for control?" "That's rich coming from you," Elizabeth fired back. "Everyone knows Mitchell Industries is hemorrhaging money under your division. If Dad dies, your financial problems disappear. And don't think I don't know about your meetings with Westlake Corp. Those meetings were authorized, not the ones in Zurich. James has proof." I backed away, but a floorboard creaked. Both turned to see me. The look on my father's face, rage mixed with fear, was unrecognizable. Sophia Elizabeth recovered first. How long have you been eavesdropping? I wasn't, I just wanted tea. Neither believed me. I retreated to my room, locking the door behind me. Something much bigger than a fall down the stairs was happening. A soft knock startled me near midnight. Warren stood outside, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Walk with me," he said. In his private study with the door locked behind us, he dropped the stern facade. There were no cameras, he admitted, pouring himself 2 fingers of bourbon. A bluff. "Then how do you know someone pushed you?" "Because I felt the hands on my back." He turned, eyes clearer than they'd been all day. "I need your help, Sophia. You've always stayed above the family politics. You observe. You notice things. What's really going on, Grandpa?" He sank into his leather chair. "I'm losing control not just of the family, but of myself. Short-term memory lapses. Confusion. The doctors can't find anything definitive, but someone in this family has noticed. Someone's making moves while I'm vulnerable. And you want me to find out who. I want you to be my eyes when mine are failing me. Someone tried to accelerate my decline last night. I need to know who and who I can still trust." He leaned forward. "Help me, and I promise you'll be rewarded for your loyalty." As I left his study, the weight of his request settled on my shoulders. I didn't care about the money or the inheritance. But the truth, that was something worth fighting for, even if it destroyed the Mitchell family in the process. Morning arrived with frost coating, the manicured grounds of the estate matching the icy atmosphere inside. The family gathered for breakfast in awkward clusters, yesterday's alliances already shifting. I watched from the sidelines, cataloging behaviors with new purpose. My father arrived looking haggard, dark circles under his eyes. He huddled with his personal assistant in the corner, their urgent whispers punctuated by my father's repeated, "They can't know yet." When he noticed me watching, he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sleep well, sweetheart." The term of endearment felt hollow. "Not really," I answered honestly. Hard to rest when someone in the family might be a would-be murderer. His expression darkened. "Your grandfather has always had a flair for drama. This is just another one of his tests, is it?" I held his gaze. "Because Aunt Elizabeth seems to think you have motive." The blood drained from his face. "Don't believe everything you hear in this house." He excused himself abruptly. I waited 10 minutes before following the direction he'd gone toward the estate's East Wing office. The door was ajar, revealing my father on a video call, his voice urgent. "The Westlake deal has to go through now. Mitchell Industries won't survive another quarter without it." He paused, listening. "I don't care about the board vote. If my father remains in control, there won't be a company left to save." I retreated, silently processing this revelation. Mitchell Industries financially troubled. My father had always presented the company as stronger than ever. If bankruptcy loomed, that would explain his increasingly desperate behavior. In the main hall, I nearly collided with Aunt Elizabeth emerging from the library. She clutched her tablet to her chest protectively. "Sophia, I was just researching something." "Family history?" I asked innocently. "Something like that." Her smile was brittle. "Have you spoken with your grandfather today?" "Not yet. I think he's still resting." Elizabeth's relief was palpable. "Good. He needs it. Yesterday was unfortunate." As she hurried away, I slipped into the library. The computer she'd been using was still logged in a rookie mistake for a woman normally so careful. The browser history showed a recently closed tab, an offshore gambling site with 7-figure losses highlighted in red. Below that, messages from someone identified only as M, with phrases like payment deadline, final, and collateral alternatives discussed. My aunt, the financial genius, was catastrophically in debt to what appeared to be organized crime figures. Another motive revealed. The kitchen provided my next discovery. Uncle James's wife, Victoria, was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. He suspects nothing, she was saying. James is handling Warren and I'm handling James. She laughed softly. Once the old man is declared incompetent, the board will turn to James. Then we implement the restructuring plan. Your position is secure, I promise. I recognize the voice responding from the speakerphone, William Bennett, the family's financial advisor. The same man photographed with Victoria at a hotel in Chicago last month in what definitely wasn't a financial meeting. Piece by piece, a mosaic of deception emerged. My cousin Tyler suddenly driving a new Porsche, despite his latest startup failing spectacularly. Uncle James's unexplained trips to Switzerland. My grandmother Margaret, usually passive in family business, reviewing legal documents when she thought no one was watching. Harold Parker, the family attorney, found me in the garden that afternoon. Your grandfather asked me to give you this. He handed me a sealed envelope. He said you'd understand its significance. Inside was a copy of Warren's most recent will modification dated just 3 days earlier. A new clause stood out: distribution of assets contingent upon beneficiary meeting moral character requirements as solely determined by executor. Any attempt to contest this provision results in immediate disinheritance. This is unusual, I remarked. Unprecedented, Parker agreed. And potentially unenforceable. But your grandfather was insistent. Who's the executor? Parker hesitated. You are. Or will be if he signs the final version tonight. The revelation staggered me. Why would Warren place such responsibility on my shoulders? Unless he's expecting something to happen to him, I realized aloud. Parker adjusted his glasses nervously. I couldn't comment on that. As he turned to leave, I noticed a business card falling from his pocket. I retrieved it after he left Westlake Corporation, the same company my father had been secretly meeting with. On the back, a handwritten note: final offer expires Friday. Returning to my room to process everything I'd learned, I found a note slipped under my door. Block letters on hotel stationery: stop, asking questions if you wanted to stay safe. That evening, when I went to move my car to make room for the caterers delivering additional food, I discovered someone had loosened the valve stems on 2 tires, causing slow leak. A warning subtle enough to seem like an accident, clear enough to send a message. The game had escalated. Someone in my family now saw me as a threat, and I was beginning to understand why Warren had reached out to me. The Mitchell family wasn't just dysfunctional, it was dangerous. The grandfather clock in the main hall struck midnight as I finished organizing my notes. Each family member now had clear motive, but I was missing a crucial piece: opportunity. Who could have accessed the staircase unnoticed during the narrow window before Warren's fall? A piercing scream shattered the night's silence. It came from the direction of Warren's suite. I bolted from my room, nearly colliding with my father in the hallway. Family members emerged from their rooms in various states of undress as another cry rang out my grandmother's voice. Help, someone help him. We found Warren convulsing on his bedroom floor, foam speckling his lips. My grandmother knelt beside him, her nightgown stained, where she'd tried to help him. He just collapsed, she sobbed. We were talking and suddenly he couldn't breathe. My father took charge immediately. Call 911, James. Help me keep his airway clear. Elizabeth, find his medication list for the paramedics. The next moments passed in controlled chaos. Security guards cleared a path to the ambulance. Medical terms I barely understood. Suspected poisoning, respiratory distress, cardiac arrhythmia floated through urgent conversations. As the paramedics whisked Warren away, the family fractured. My father and James accompanied the ambulance. Elizabeth retreated to call board members. My grandmother, sedated by Warren's private doctor, was helped to her room. In the sudden vacuum, I saw my opportunity. I started with my father's guest suite, picking the lock with skills my rebellious college roommate had taught me. His briefcase yielded the first bombshell documents outlining Mitchell Industries' precarious financial position. The company had over-leveraged itself on the Axiom merger, betting everything on proprietary technology that was now revealed to be mostly vapor. My father had known and proceeded anyway, desperate to impress Warren with a major acquisition. More damning was a letter from Westlake Corporation outlining terms for a hostile takeover that would leave my father as CEO but remove the rest of the family from operational control. The date on the preliminary agreement, 3 weeks earlier. Elizabeth's room came next. The bedside drawer contained an unmarked prescription bottle, small white pills unlike any medication I recognized. I pocketed one for testing. Her laptop revealed communications with a private investigator who had compiled detailed reports on Warren's declining cognitive function information she'd kept from the rest of the family. I nearly got caught leaving James and Victoria's suite. Their voices approached as I finished photographing documents outlining a restructuring plan that would dismantle Mitchell Industries for parts netting them billions while destroying my grandfather's legacy. I barely made it into an adjoining bathroom before they entered. "This is happening too fast," Victoria whispered urgently. "The board won't support James if Warren dies under suspicious circumstances." "He's not going to die," James replied coldly. "Just be incapacitated enough for the court to grant us temporary control. The doctors know what to do. And Sophia, she's been watching everything. Leave my niece to me. Once we have control, her little investigation won't matter." I remained frozen until they left for the hospital, my blood running cold. Whatever was happening was far worse than I'd imagined. My phone buzzed with a hospital update from my father. Warren stabilized but unconscious. Doctors suspected some kind of poisoning but needed more tests. Police had been notified as a precaution. I was about to head to the hospital myself when Harold Parker arrived, unexpectedly summoning the remaining family members to the library. In the event of Warren Mitchell's incapacitation, Parker announced grimly his living will stipulates immediate implementation of Protocol 87. "What the hell is Protocol 87?" Elizabeth demanded. Parker adjusted his glasses. "A contingency plan that temporarily transfers operational control of Mitchell Industries to an independent trustee until Mr. Mitchell recovers or other arrangements are formalized." The room erupted in outrage. "Who's the trustee?" Victoria asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "That information is confidential until the transfer is complete. All executive decisions are frozen for 72 hours. The family's reaction told me everything. This wasn't about Warren's health. It was about control of the company. The attack wasn't meant to kill him, but to render him unable to fight back against whatever coup was unfolding. As the arguments continued, I slipped away to find my cousin Tyler. I'd noticed him during the medical emergency, not helping but watching, with an expression more calculating than concerned. I found him in the pool house, hurriedly packing a bag. Going somewhere, I asked from the doorway. He started violently. "Jesus, Sophia, don't sneak up on people. Interesting time for a trip with your grandfather in the hospital. I have meetings I can't miss." His hands trembled as he stuffed clothes into a designer duffel bag. "Meetings about what happened to Warren." The duffel dropped. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." I stepped closer. "You've been nervous since before the fall. You know something." Tyler's facade crumbled. "You don't understand. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. Tell me." "I overheard them planning it," he whispered. "Not the details, just. They needed Warren out of the way temporarily. Something about brain function tests while he was incapacitated that would prove he couldn't run the company anymore." "Who's they?" He shook his head frantically. "I can't. They'll know I talked." They poisoned him, Tyler. He could have died. That wasn't supposed to happen. The stairs were just to get him to the hospital for the tests. The rest? His eyes darted to the door. There's more going on than you understand. It's not just one person. It's an alliance. Between who? Tyler grabbed his bag. Figure it out yourself. I'm not ending up like Warren. He pushed past me but paused at the door. Check the East Wing security panel. The power outage in the surveillance system wasn't an accident. As he disappeared into the night, I realized the truth was far more complicated than a single culprit. Warren wasn't facing one enemy, but a conspiracy within his own family. And now they knew I was getting close. The hospital waiting room at 3 a.m. was a study in family dynamics. My father paced while dictating emails, pausing only to argue with doctors about access to Warren. Elizabeth sat rigidly beside Gregory, her fingers constantly refreshing news sites for any public leak about Warren's condition. James and Victoria huddled with Harold Parker, their conversation too quiet to overhear. I was examining Tyler's clue about the security system when my mother appeared beside me, offering coffee. "You look exhausted, darling," Catherine said, her perfectly manicured nails wrapping around a hospital-grade paper cup. Despite the hour, her makeup remained flawless, her designer loungewear unwrinkled. "It's been a long night," I answered cautiously. "Walk with me," she suggested. "These fluorescent lights give me migraines." In a deserted hospital garden, frost crunching beneath our shoes, my mother dropped her socialite mask. "You need to stop whatever investigation you're conducting," she said flatly. "It's dangerous." I feigned innocence. "I'm just worried about Grandpa." "Please." Her laugh was bitter. "I raised you. I know when you're playing detective. Warren put you up to it, didn't he?" When I didn't respond, she sighed. "He always did see himself in you. The outsider who observes everything. Is that what you think of me, the outsider?" "I think you're the only person in this family with a moral compass." She touched my arm. "Which is why I'm warning you to walk away from this. Things are in motion that can't be stopped." The genuine concern in her voice caught me off guard. My mother had always been emotionally distant, focused on maintaining our social position rather than maternal connection. This new protective stance felt alien. "What things, Mom?" She hesitated. "Your grandfather is not well, Sophia. Not just physically. His mind is slipping, has been for months. The board members know it, the executives know it, but Warren refuses to acknowledge reality. So someone decided to help reality along by pushing him down the stairs. That was unfortunate. An escalation no one intended." She glanced around to ensure we were alone. "But you need to understand the stakes. Mitchell Industries employs 37,000 people. Manages retirement accounts worth billions. If Warren continues making erratic decisions, thousands of families lose everything." The pieces clicked together. "You're involved in this." Instead of denying it, she surprised me. "Someone has to protect this family from Warren's decline. And from themselves." Memories flooded back my mother's unusual interest in business meetings, her strategic social connections with board members, the private lunches with James that my father never knew about. I dismissed it as social climbing, but it was something else entirely. "How long?" I asked. "Warren's decline, almost a year. Our contingency planning, 6 months. She touched my shoulder. "I'm trying to save this family, Sophia. Join me. Help guide the transition. You're the only one Warren still trusts completely. We need that trust." "We." James and I have been working together to prepare for this moment. Your father is too sentimental about Warren and Elizabeth, too bitter. James understands pragmatic necessity. The betrayal cut deep. My own mother had been orchestrating a coup against my grandfather, against her own husband's father. And what happens to Grandpa in this plan? Comfortable retirement, medical care, dignity. She straightened. The alternative is public humiliation as his condition deteriorates. Shareholders filing lawsuits. The Mitchell name dragged through courts for years. I stared at this woman I thought I knew. "Did you poison him tonight?" Of course not. Her shock seemed genuine. The staircase incident was meant to trigger medical tests that would reveal his cognitive decline. Tonight was unauthorized escalation. Someone got impatient, and that doesn't concern you, that one of your co-conspirators tried to kill him. Warren won't die. Her confidence was chilling. That would trigger too many investigations. He'll recover enough to sign the papers transferring control, then retire quietly to the lake house. She reached for my hand. "Help us make this transition smooth, for everyone's sake. And if I don't?" Her expression hardened. "Then stay out of the way. Family politics can be hazardous, especially for those who don't understand the rules." As she walked away, she called over her shoulder. The surveillance footage from the East Wing was accidentally erased during a system update. Such a shame. Might have revealed who tampered with the staircase. The implied threat was clear. She was warning me that evidence was disappearing, that resistance was futile. Back in my hospital chair, I pretended to doze while processing this new reality. My mother and James were orchestrating Warren's removal. They believed his mental faculties were failing catastrophically, something Warren himself had partially admitted to me. The question remained who had escalated to poisoning. My mother seemed genuinely surprised by that development. James had the medical connections. Elizabeth had the mysterious pills. My father had the most to lose if Warren remained in control. As dawn broke, my father received a call that made him go pale. "The board has called an emergency meeting," he announced to the family. "Someone leaked Warren's condition to key investors. Our stock is dropping in pre-market trading." James stepped forward smoothly. "I'll handle the board. As COO, I'm best positioned to reassure them." My father bristled. "As president, that's my responsibility. Not when your division is responsible for the Axiom disaster," James countered. As they argued, I noticed my mother subtly positioning herself beside James, the allegiance now visible to anyone paying attention. I slipped away to call Harold Parker from a private corner. "I need information on Protocol 87, I told him. "The full document, not the summary." "I can't do that, Sophia. It's confidential until—" "My grandfather made me executor of his new will," I interrupted. "And I know about the meetings you've been having with Westlake Corporation." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he whispered, "How did you know about that?" "I know everything, Harold. Now Protocol 87. My inbox. 10 minutes. I had no idea if the bluff would work, but 7 minutes later, the document arrived. As I read, my heart sank. Warren hadn't been paranoid, he'd been prepared. Protocol 87 was a poison pill designed to make Mitchell Industries virtually untakeable for 6 months, while an independent trustee evaluated all executive decisions. Warren had created a failsafe against exactly the coup my mother and James were attempting. The only problem, it required Warren's biometric authentication or mine as the designated backup, a backup that no one, not even my mother, knew about. As I headed back to the waiting room, I nearly collided with James coming around the corner. "There you are," he said smoothly. "Your mother mentioned you might need convincing about our transition plan." His hand closed around my upper arm with deceptive gentleness. The warning in his eyes was anything but gentle. "Family first, Sophia. Always remember that." Against medical advice, Warren checked himself out of the hospital 36 hours after the poisoning incident. Toxicology had confirmed elevated levels of a sedative in his system, enough to cause respiratory distress, but not death. The police investigation stalled when Warren refused to file charges, insisting it was a family matter. His return to the mansion created a power vacuum no one was prepared for. The extended Thanksgiving weekend had become a war of succession with family members, openly choosing sides. "I've called this meeting," Warren announced from his study's armchair, looking frailer, but his eyes sharp with purpose to accelerate our succession planning. The family gathered in tense clusters, my father standing alone, Elizabeth with Gregory, James, and Victoria with their practiced united front. My mother positioned herself carefully between groups, the strategist keeping options open. I remained by the doorway observing. "Recent events have clarified certain matters for me," Warren continued. "I've made decisions about the future of Mitchell Industries and this family's role within it." Before he could elaborate, Harold Parker entered with a stack of documents. "The papers you requested, Mr. Mitchell. Shall I distribute them?" Warren nodded, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for his bourbon. "Every adult member of this family will find their future outlined in these agreements. Review carefully before signing." As Parker distributed manila folders, the room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Pages flipped, followed by shocked inhalations or angry mutters. "This is outrageous," my father finally exploded. "You're cutting the family's voting shares to 30%. You can't possibly expect us to accept this," Elizabeth added, her folder already closed in rejection. Warren's smile was cold. "I expect nothing. You're free to decline. Those who sign remain part of Mitchell Industries' future. Those who don't will receive their inheritance now, a one-time payment representing fair market value for their current shares. Then they go their own way." "It's blackmail," James said quietly. "It's business," Warren corrected. "Something this family has forgotten in its pursuit of petty power struggles and personal vendettas." As arguments erupted, Uncle James cornered me in the hallway. His familiar cologne couldn't mask the sour smell of desperation. "We need to talk, Sophia. Privately." In the conservatory surrounded by my grandmother's prized orchids, James dropped his executive persona. "Your grandfather is destroying everything we've built," he said urgently. "These new agreements eliminate our voting control. He's bringing in outside executives who don't understand our business model. Our business model that's currently hemorrhaging cash," I countered. His eyes narrowed. "You've been digging. Good. Then you understand why we need change, but not this scorched earth approach. Join us. With your support, we can propose an alternative transition, like the one you and my mother have been planning for months." His surprise was brief. "Catherine told you. Then you understand the necessity." Warren's cognitive decline. "Is that your justification for poisoning him?" "I had nothing to do with that." His vehemence seemed genuine. "The staircase incident, yes, we needed medical tests. But the poisoning crossed a line no one authorized." "Then who did it?" James's gaze slid away. "There are other factions in play." When I returned to the main house, Elizabeth was waiting her offer, similarly desperate but differently framed. "Your father is leveraged to his eyeballs," she said without preamble. "Did you know he mortgaged his personal properties to double down on the failing Axiom deal? And James has been siphoning R&D funds to offshore accounts for 3 years." She pushed a flash drive into my hand. "Everything you need to take them both down. Help me convince Warren to restore the original succession plan with me as CEO, and I'll make you head of the Mitchell Foundation with complete autonomy." The flash drive felt heavy in my palm. "Why me?" "Because Warren trusts you. And because, unlike the rest of us, you've never tried to take anything from him." The family continued to splinter throughout the day. Victoria approached with hints about James's extensive medical contacts, who could testify to Warren's incompetence. My father cornered me with desperate pleas to understand the Axiom deal wasn't his fault. Board members called hourly for updates, sensing the family civil war through some corporate osmosis. That evening, my phone buzzed with an unexpected alert. The security system in the garage had detected motion. The camera feed showed someone crouching beside my car working on the brake lines. I couldn't identify them in the dark garage, but the message was clear. Someone considered me enough of a threat to escalate from warnings to attempted harm. I called a college friend who lived nearby, asking to borrow her car indefinitely. When she arrived, I carefully backed out of the estate, watching for followers. 3 blocks away, I switched vehicles and headed to her apartment, finally feeling safe enough to think clearly. Tyler's words echoed. It's not just one person, it's an alliance. But the alliances kept shifting. My mother and James. Elizabeth against them both. Victoria playing all sides. My father desperate to save himself. I needed someone I could trust, someone with no stake in the inheritance. At midnight, I called Leah Chen, my best friend from college, who now worked as a forensic accountant. I need help with a corporate conspiracy that's turned dangerous, I explained. Family business, she guessed, already understanding. The worst kind. How fast can you analyze financial records and security system logs? Give me 24 hours and admin access. I sent her everything I'd gathered, the flash drive from Elizabeth, photos of documents from everyone's rooms, the mysterious pill for testing. Then I drafted a counter strategy, knowing I needed to return to the mansion before my absence triggered suspicion. The next morning, I walked into Warren's study to find my grandmother Margaret sitting beside him, their hands intertwined in a moment of rare tenderness. Sophia, Warren greeted me. You disappeared last night. I needed perspective, I admitted. This house is toxic right now. Indeed. He gestured to a chair. We've been discussing options for moving forward. Margaret's usual placid expression had hardened into something more resolute. Your grandfather tells me you've been helping him uncover the truth. Trying to. And what have you found? Warren asked. I took a deep breath. Multiple conspiracies. Shifting alliances. Everyone has motive, but the methods don't align. Dad's facing bankruptcy from the Axiom deal. Elizabeth's gambling debts are tied to organized crime. James and Mom have been plotting your removal for months. Victoria's having an affair with the financial advisor who's helping them restructure the company without family control. Warren absorbed this without surprise. And the attempts on my safety, the staircase was James and Mom. They admit that much. But the poisoning. I hesitated. James denies involvement. So does Mom. I believe them, actually. Leaving Elizabeth or Robert as the most likely culprits, Warren finished. I nodded reluctantly. Or someone we haven't considered. The pill I found in Elizabeth's room is being analyzed. The security system update that erased footage was authorized using Parker's credentials, but he claims he didn't do it. Warren turned to Margaret. You see, just as we suspected, my grandmother's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted to believe it could come to this. What could come to this? I asked, suddenly uneasy. Warren stood with effort. Family destroying family for money and power. My legacy corrupted by greed. He moved to the window overlooking the estate grounds. My father built a manufacturing business from nothing. I transformed it into a technology empire. And now my children would tear it apart rather than protect it. Not all of them, Margaret said softly. No, not all. Warren turned back to me. Sophia, I need you to implement the final phase of Protocol 87. It's time. What does that mean exactly? I asked. It means saving what can be saved, Warren answered cryptically, and accepting what cannot. As I left the study, I encountered my cousin Tyler slipping back into the mansion. You disappeared, I commented. His eyes darted nervously. Changed my mind. Realized running looked suspicious. Smart. Any other realizations while you were gone? He hesitated. The board members James has been meeting with. They're also on Westlake's advisory committee, double agents. Another piece clicked into place. Thanks, Tyler. Are you going to tell Warren? I already did. I studied his reaction. Why worried about which side to choose? There are no sides anymore, Sophia. His voice dropped. Just survivors and casualties. As I watched him walk away, my phone buzzed with Leah's preliminary findings. 3 words that changed everything. Cognitive tests normal. If Warren's mind wasn't failing, the entire justification for my mother and James's coup collapsed. Either they were wrong or they were lying. And suddenly, I wasn't sure which possibility frightened me more. Late that night, a soft knock woke me from restless sleep. I opened my bedroom door to find my grandmother Margaret standing in the hallway, her silver hair loose around her shoulders instead of its usual tight bun. "We need to talk," she whispered, "where no one will hear us." I followed her through the darkened house to the solarium, a glass-enclosed garden room that had always been her private sanctuary. The space smelled of jasmine and damp earth plants breathing in the enclosed warmth. "I pushed Warren down the stairs," she said, without preamble, sinking onto a wrought iron bench. "Not James, not Catherine, not Elizabeth, me." The confession struck me silent. Of all the scenarios I'd considered, my gentle grandmother as the attacker had never entered my mind. Why I finally managed. Margaret's laugh held no humor. 55 years of marriage to Warren Mitchell. Do you have any idea what that's like? To be the silent partner, the smiling wife, the woman who built half the business but whose name appears nowhere? Grandma. I met Warren when we were in college. I had the business degree. He had the charisma and family connections. We started the company together in our garage. My market analysis identified the microprocessor opportunity. My family loans provided the initial capital. But Mitchell Industries bears only his name. She twisted her wedding ring, a massive diamond that suddenly looked more like a shackle than a symbol of love. I accepted that. It was the 1,960 seconds. What woman didn't stand in her husband's shadow? But Warren's cruelty was always private, always careful. The public saw the brilliant businessman. Only I saw the man who belittled me behind closed doors, who took my ideas and claimed them as his own, who slept with his secretaries while I raised his children. Her revelations stunned me. The Warren Mitchell I knew was demanding and manipulative, yes, but not this monster Margaret described. 2 months ago, she continued, Warren received a diagnosis: stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Terminal. 6 months at most. Cancer, I gasped. But no one said anything about, because he told no one except me. Not his doctors at the company. Not his children. Just his wife, whom he informed with the same emotion one might report a weather forecast. Her hands trembled. And then he told me his plans for the family after his death. The new agreements, I murmured. The succession plan. A final act of cruelty. He intends to pit the children against each other one last time. The agreements contain impossible performance conditions, competing directives. When they inevitably fail these tests of loyalty, the bulk of the inheritance goes to the Mitchell Foundation, with you as its head. Me, I shook my head in disbelief. I never wanted. I know. That's why he chose you, the only one who didn't want the money. His final move in a lifetime of manipulative games. Margaret's eyes glistened with unshed tears. When he explained this plan, how he would amuse himself in his final months by watching his children destroy each other for his approval, one last time, something inside me broke. So you pushed him, she nodded. We were at the top of the stairs. He was gloating about Elizabeth's gambling addiction, how he'd known for months but let it worsen to see how far she'd fall. And I just pushed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. 55 years of rage in one moment of clarity. The revelation recalibrated everything I thought I knew. Does he know it was you? He knew immediately. Warren always knows everything. Her smile was sad. He forgave me on the spot, said he understood my frustration. Even as he was bleeding, he was strategizing how to use the incident to test the family's reactions. Turning my moment of rebellion into another one of his game. And the poisoning, not me. Her denial rang true. Someone else has their own agenda. Someone who didn't know about the cancer. I processed this new information, connecting dots that suddenly formed a very different picture. The cognitive decline James and Mom mentioned, another of Warren's manipulations. He deliberately displayed symptoms in front of certain people, forgot names, showed confusion about dates. He wanted to see who would try to take advantage. Her lips thinned. Your mother and James took the bait exactly as he predicted. So he's not actually declining mentally. His mind is as sharp as ever. The only real weakness is his body failing from the cancer. Margaret stood moving to touch a blooming orchid. He's played this family like chess pieces our entire lives. Even his death is just another move on the board. Why tell me this now? Because tomorrow he plans to reveal everything: the cancer, the fake cognitive symptoms, the surveillance he's been conducting. He'll expose everyone's schemes and betrayals in front of the entire family. She turned to face me. It will destroy them, Sophia. Not just their relationship with him, but with each other. Decades of resentment will explode into open hatred. Maybe they deserve it, I said, thinking of the brake lines on my car, the poisoning attempt. Perhaps. But do you deserve to inherit this legacy of bitterness? To spend your life looking over your shoulder, wondering which family member might still want revenge? Margaret took my hands. I'm asking you to help me stop this final act of cruelty. How? Convince Warren to reveal the cancer, but spare them the public humiliation. Let them find their own paths to redemption or destruction, but without this final psychological torture. I considered her request, weighing loyalty to Warren against the damage his plan would cause. I'll try. But first, I need to know who poisoned him. That crossed a line from corporate scheming to attempted murder. Margaret nodded slowly. I've had my suspicions. The timing was too convenient, coming right after Harold Parker arrived with the Protocol 87 papers. Parker, the attorney, had seemed so benign, so secondary to the family drama. Start by asking about his meetings with Westlake Corporation, and why a family lawyer would have prescription access to the particular sedative found in Warren's system. Dawn was breaking as I left the solarium, my world fundamentally altered. My grandmother, the family matriarch I'd always seen as a passive figure, had harbored decades of justified rage. My grandfather, dying of cancer, was orchestrating an elaborate final revenge against his own children. And Harold Parker, the seemingly boring family attorney, might be playing a deadlier game than anyone suspected. I made 2 calls before heading to the estate's security office. First, to Leah requesting an urgent background check on Parker. Second, to a laboratory contact asking for rush analysis of the pill from Elizabeth's room. The security office yielded the final proof I needed. Login records showed Parker's credentials accessing the system, right before the alleged update that erased the staircase footage. Parker, who had claimed to be at a dinner across town at that exact time, an alibi I'd already verified through restaurant security footage. Someone had used Parker's credentials without his knowledge. Someone with access to his laptop or phone. Someone who knew enough about corporate law to understand Protocol 87's implications. When I confronted Parker in the estate's library an hour later, his initial denials crumbled under the evidence I presented. It wasn't my idea. He finally admitted sweat beading on his forehead. Westlake approached me first. Just information about the family's vulnerabilities. But then they wanted more inside access documentation of Warren's declining competence. Except he wasn't actually declining, I pointed out. Parker's eyes widened. What? You've been manipulated, Harold. By Westlake and by Warren himself. I leaned closer. The question is, did you provide the sedative that nearly killed my grandfather? No, his horror seemed genuine. That was never part of the plan. Whose plan exactly? He hesitated, fear evident in his expression. If I tell you, they'll destroy my career, my life. If you don't tell me, I'll let Warren believe you were directly involved in his poisoning. Which do you prefer? Parker broke, revealing connections between Westlake and unexpected parties within the family, a conspiracy more intricate than I'd imagined. By the time he finished his confession, I had the final piece of the puzzle. I knew who had poisoned Warren. I knew why the brake lines on my car had been cut. And I knew exactly how to stop the impending family destruction my grandmother feared, not by convincing Warren to show mercy, but by exposing the real threat that had been hiding in plain sight. The stage was set for the final confrontation. All the players would be present for the reading of Warren's amended will that afternoon, including the would-be killer who still believed their tracks were covered. Sometimes family secrets need to remain buried, but sometimes bringing them into the light is the only way to prevent tragedy from repeating itself. The Mitchell family gathered in Warren's study at precisely 3 o'clock. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like omens in the air. Warren sat behind his massive desk, looking simultaneously frail and formidable. Every adult family member attended my father, Robert, rigid with anxiety. Elizabeth, her usual confidence dimmed. James falsely relaxed, but eyes constantly moving. My mother, Catherine, carefully neutral. Spouses maintaining strategic distances. Cousins, including Tyler, who couldn't stop fidgeting. And my grandmother, Margaret, whose serene expression now read differently to me after our midnight confession. Harold Parker stood to Warren's right, documents arranged before him, his professional demeanor undermined by a slight tremor in his hands. I positioned myself by the door, observing as always, but also blocking the only exit. Before we begin, Warren announced, his voice stronger than it had been in days. I have a personal matter to address. The room tensed collectively. I've been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Terminal. My doctors give me 3 to 6 months. Shock rippled through the room, genuine from most, but I watched carefully for those who didn't react with surprise. James and my mother exchanged a barely perceptible glance. That's why I've accelerated our succession planning, Warren continued. Time has become my scarcest resource. Dad, my father began, why didn't you tell us sooner? We could have what Robert shown more compassion, made fewer attempts to undermine me. Warren's smile was razor sharp. I think we all know that's unlikely. Elizabeth leaned forward. Is that why you've been exhibiting cognitive symptoms, side effects from cancer treatment? No, Warren replied simply. Those were a test. One that several of you failed spectacularly. My mother's carefully composed expression slipped. James's jaw tightened. You faked symptoms of dementia, James asked incredulously. I created a scenario to see who would remain loyal and who would exploit perceived weakness. Warren's gaze swept the room. The results were exactly as I predicted. You divided into factions. You plotted against me and each other. You confirmed every cynical expectation I've developed over decades of watching human nature at its worst. The silence that followed was suffocating. However, Warren continued. Recent events have forced me to reconsider my approach. He nodded to me. This was the moment we'd discussed earlier, the compromise I'd brokered between his desire for vindication and Margaret's plea for mercy. Rather than detailing each betrayal I've documented, I'm offering a reset. The agreements before you provide fair, substantial inheritances with minimal strings attached. The company will transition to professional management with family board representation. No tests, no competitions. Just a clean break that allows each of you to build your future without the shadow of Mitchell Industries determining your worth. The family sat stunned. This unexpected mercy was so unlike Warren that several members looked skeptical, waiting for the trap to spring. There is one non-negotiable condition, Warren added. The person responsible for poisoning me must be identified and excluded from inheritance. My father stood abruptly. This is absurd. None of us would— Sit down, Robert, I interrupted. We have proof. All eyes turned to me. For the past 3 days, I've been investigating on Warren's behalf. I've documented every scheme, alliance, and betrayal within this family. I moved to stand beside Warren's desk. I know who accessed the security system to delete footage. I know who falsified financial reports to trigger board intervention. I know who leaked information to Westlake Corporation to facilitate a hostile takeover. I placed a folder on the desk. But most importantly, I know who switched Warren's heart medication with a sedative that could have killed him if administered in a slightly higher dose. The room erupted in denials and accusations. I raised my hand for silence. The pill I found in Elizabeth's room was analyzed this morning. It's a benzodiazepine similar to what was found in Warren's system. A convenient plant to frame Elizabeth while the real culprit remained above suspicion. Elizabeth's eyes widened. You searched my room. Everyone's rooms, I admitted. But the person who poisoned Warren made a critical mistake. The specific compound in Warren's blood work doesn't appear in standard toxicology screens. It required specialized testing that only someone with detailed knowledge of both medicine and corporate security protocols would know to request in advance. I turned to Victoria James's wife, someone like a former pharmaceutical executive with access to experimental sedatives through research contacts, someone who stood to lose everything if Warren remained in control long enough to sign the new agreements. Someone desperate enough to eliminate both Warren and me when we got too close to the truth. Victoria's carefully maintained composure cracked. You have no proof. Actually, we do. I nodded to Harold Parker, who slid a document across the desk. Your fingerprints on the medication bottle. Your email to a former colleague at Mercer Pharmaceuticals requesting the compound for personal insomnia issues. The unauthorized access to Warren's suite using James's security credentials while he was verifiably in a board meeting. Victoria's gaze darted to the door. I was blocking to James, who had physically distanced himself from her to the family, whose collective shock had crystallized into horror. James was never going to divorce me, she said, finally her voice eerily calm. I'd lose everything. The prenup was ironclad. But as his widow after Warren died and James took control, she shrugged. I'd be set for life. You were going to kill me too, James whispered, ashen-faced. Only if necessary. Victoria's mask of sophisticated charm had completely dissolved. The car brake lines were a warning for Sophia. She should have taken the hint. 2 security guards I'd stationed outside entered at my signal. The police have been provided with all evidence, I told Victoria as they approached. They're waiting to take your statement. As Victoria was escorted out, the family sat in stunned silence. The conspiracy had been more twisted than any of us imagined. Victoria playing all sides, manipulating James while planning his eventual elimination, seeing Warren's illness as an opportunity to accelerate her timetable. Well, Warren said after a long moment that was unexpected even to me. A strangled laugh escaped Elizabeth, then another from my father until nearly everyone was engaged in the uncomfortable laughter of released tension and lingering shock. Warren raised a hand for quiet. Now about these agreements. Despite what just transpired, my offer stands. You're all deeply flawed, scheming, selfish, and remarkably poor conspirators, but you're still my family. My mother spoke up, her voice uncharacteristically humble. Why the change of heart, Warren? You had us all at your mercy. You could have exposed everything we've done. Warren's gaze found Margaret's held it for a meaningful moment. Let's just say I received some perspective on the damage caused by decades of manipulation and games. Even those I orchestrated myself. My father cleared his throat. The Axiom merger was a mistake I pushed for despite your warnings, Warren interrupted. Mitchell Industries will survive it. The board has approved a restructuring plan that Sophia helped develop. Elizabeth looked at me with new respect. You never wanted any of this, did you? The money, the power? No, I admitted. But I do want this family to heal if that's still possible. The next hours passed in painful but necessary conversations. Warren revealed the full extent of his illness and treatment options. My father acknowledged his financial mismanagement. Elizabeth admitted her gambling had begun as corporate espionage but spiraled into addiction. James confronted his complicity in Victoria's schemes while grappling with her betrayal. My mother approached me privately as the discussions continued. You knew about James and me. The coup attempt, yes. Yet you didn't expose us specifically. What would be the point? Victoria's actions were criminal. The rest was just family dysfunction reaching its inevitable conclusion. Catherine studied me with new eyes. You're going to be running the Mitchell Foundation. Someone needs to ensure the family money does some actual good in the world. You'll be good at it. She touched my arm, an uncharacteristically maternal gesture. I'm sorry, Sophia. For many things. 6 months later, we gathered again, this time at the lakeside property. Warren had always loved best. His decline had been swift but peaceful, managed by hospice care in his final weeks. The funeral was private, attended only by family and close friends, a stark contrast to the public spectacle Warren might once have orchestrated. In the aftermath of his death, the agreements he'd offered that day in his study had proven fair and thoughtful. Mitchell Industries continued under professional management with family board representation. The children and grandchildren received significant inheritances with minimal restrictions. The Mitchell Foundation, under my direction, received the largest portion with a mandate for ethical business investment and community support. Victoria had accepted a plea deal, serving time for attempted murder, while providing evidence against pharmaceutical executives who had supplied the sedative. The following Thanksgiving, our first without Warren, we gathered at the lake house rather than the mansion. The smaller space forced closer proximity, making avoidance impossible. Conversations remained, sometimes stilted, sometimes heated, but fundamentally honest in a way they'd never been during Warren's life. After dinner, my grandmother Margaret invited everyone to the porch overlooking the water. Twilight painted the lake in purples and golds as she raised a glass. To Warren, she began with all his flaws and virtues. To Grandpa, I added who in his final months found more wisdom than in all the years before. And to us, my father surprised everyone by saying who might finally learn to be a family instead of competitors. As conversations continued into the evening, I found myself beside Margaret, watching the family interact with cautious but growing warmth. We're not fixed, I observed quietly. There's still so much damage. Of course, she replied. Healing takes longer than breaking. But it's a beginning. Was it worth it? I asked. All those years with him. Margaret considered the question, her eyes reflecting the last light on the water. Life is complex, Sophia. Warren was brilliant, charismatic, sometimes kind, often cruel. I made my choices and lived with their consequences. But if there's one lesson worth passing on, it's this. The bruises we can't see last longer than the ones we can. Choose carefully who you give power over your heart. As the evening wound down, I found myself reflecting on everything that had transpired since that fateful Thanksgiving when my billionaire grandfather stood before us with a bruise under his eye. Our family had been forced to confront decades of manipulation, resentment, and destructive patterns. We'd discovered terrible truths and unexpected courage. We'd begun painfully but genuinely to rebuild. What's your experience with family dynamics? Have you ever discovered that someone you thought you knew well was hiding unexpected depths, good or bad? Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Life is too short for superficial relationships, so cherish those who show you their true selves and treat your heart with care. Thank you for joining me on this difficult journey. Sometimes, the stories that hurt most to tell are the ones that help others feel less alone in their own complicated families.